Welcome back to Alberta Primetime, and the vocal point now, a surprise decline in Canada's gross domestic product. New figures are out today, plus billions of dollars of your tax money for carbon capture and storage. A good investment? Our Monday Money panel brings in Angus Watt tonight. He is Managing Director of National Bank Financial and Angus Watt Advisory Group. As well, Shafik Hirani, Director and Senior Executive Financial Advisor with Investors Group Calgary, and Todd Hirsch, Senior Economist with ATB Financial. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello. Hello.
Shafik, first tell us about the February GDP figure released today.
Yeah, it was a surprise number. The GDP numbers they're targeting, the Finance Minister Flaherty and Mark Carney are targeting 2.5% growth in Canada. They're expecting a 0.2% rise for the first quarter. It came in as a 0.2% decline. So it gives us some good indication and that surprise about what they're going to do with about interest rates and what the areas are that are lagging, but it was a surprise number.
Some media are reporting today this makes our economy look slower than that of the U.S. Angus?
No, and I would agree with that. And it's actually for the month of February, it was down 0.2%, but it was up only 0.1% in the month of January. So if you're trying to get to 2.5, on an annualized basis, and you're basically in a minus 0.1% right now, it is going to be challenging. It is going to be difficult. And if you take a look at job creation that we've had in Canada, 2 years ago, we were so excited how great we were doing. Things were moving along.
Yeah, this is a bit of a setback.
Yeah, this is a setback. Well, we haven't really, in my mind, if we haven't had job creation, where we're beating the U.S. numbers where we were a year ago until summer of last year. And we've been lagging and lagging and lagging and lagging. And so we were saying, hey, interest rates could be going higher because we could have a growth rate of 2.5%. Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be expecting the interest rates to be moving up very quickly. We know the Federal Reserve thinks rates won't move up until the end of 2014. If you just take a look at these numbers today, it, probably won't move up in Canada for some period of time, and the Canadian dollar reacted immediately. It dropped about 2/3 of a cent. It dropped to a lower price.
So what does this mean for Albertans? Todd, Angus touched on the interest rate angle. Hopefully if you owe a lot of money, that is, they'll stay low on that side. But a fragile economy, yet on the other hand, we've got Alberta leading the nation in terms of GDP. Where does this put us as people living in this province and having to deal with this new economic news?
Well, I think Alberta is still the growth leader in the country. The February numbers that we saw this morning for national GDP, it doesn't break it out by province. However, it does break it out by sector. And the oil and gas extraction sector was very weak, actually, in February. Now, the report from Stats Canada did point out that a lot of that had to do with some unexpected maintenance shutdowns for some oil facilities. And, of course, natural gas prices are low, so that wasn't a surprise. Overall, though, even though that oil and gas sector was weak in February, I'd still expect Alberta to be bouncing back and continue to be the growth leader in the country. Most of the weakness is still concentrated in central Canada.
Okay. On to another story. TransAlta Corp, lead partner in the $1.4 billion Pioneer carbon capture and storage project, says it just cannot justify the expense. It's pulling out. Todd, we'll start with you on this one. Why are businesses backing out? What's the bottom line?
Well, the bottom line is dollars and cents. And if it makes no economic sense for them to do it, I don't blame them for backing out. I think it's kind of sad that they are, but I don't blame them. A company like TransAlta, they do have to report to their shareholders, and their shareholders aren't going to be very happy if, in fact, TransAlta is following along a path of research that is uneconomic for them at this point. Why I think it is disappointing is because it is that kind of research in something that might take a few generations, in fact, to make work, to make economic. But having said that, I fully understand the financial, the cost for TransAlta too.
Well, and that's just the thing. It's not so much the science that's the problem here. It's the money. Shafik, Alberta has one of the world's first carbon markets. It's put a price on pollution, $15 a ton. Is that just ton, yeah, simply too low? Where does it have to be? How far do we have to go? Can we push it there?
It's a delicate balance, and it's going to go up. So what happens is, what a lot of Albertans don't understand is the carbon capture, emission, and sequestration. It's not on natural gas. It's not on a lot of the oil sands. It's on coal burning projects. So what they have to do is they have to capture all this gas, liquefy it, and then they have to store it and resell it. $15 a ton just isn't enough money. So there are some people projecting it to go up to about $100 a ton. When that goes up, then there's more feasibility in these projects. But until then, the TransAltas of the world are saying, well, there's no regulatory framework, there's no clarity going forward, so they're backing out.
It sounds like in the end the consumer or the taxpayer, same person, is going to pay in the end if utilities are wanting to have to pay more to capture their CO2.
Well, I think you're right, but don't forget industry as well, because one of the things you need in industry and manufacturing is a competitive power price. And this is one of the few provinces, as you pointed out, this is the first marketplace that we have in carbon capture storage. And so if we're charging and taxing it, so if we're trying to clean up our environment and nobody else is around the world, then it puts it at disadvantage. And therefore, you know, should it be $15 or should it be $100 or should it be $200? You want to be profitable, encourage everybody to do it, then maybe it's more than $100. However, if you do that, then you kind of kill the goose.
Well, and that's the problem, because Albertans as taxpayers are in for $2 billion federally, another billion
Our commitment is up to $2 billion. It's not that we put in $2 billion at this point in time.
Okay.
I think they've only put in about $15 to $30 million. Well, as Todd mentioned, you're still at the very early stages, and we don't have generations. You know, we've got years. You've got the power that's being generated today. The federal government, which sets the standards, are the ones that are trying to get everybody up to a new level. And even on the new level, we don't have the technology for it, right? Okay. And we don't have the plant and equipment to operate at that level. And so they say, wow, hey, we're going to tax you. And you kind of go, you know, the cart before the horse. But it's a challenge. But we have a commitment here in Alberta that we want to appear to be environmentally clean. And that's why we have this process.
Todd, final question before we go to break for you on this. And Alberta Environment Minister Diana McQueen points out this is 1 out of 4 CCS projects. The Pioneer one is canned. How do the other 3 look? We're not just talking oil sands here, it's the coal-fired power plants.
Well, I don't know the exact economics of the other projects, but I'm pessimistic. I don't know. If this one didn't work, I'm not really sure what the other 3 would be doing differently, that they're going to find the economics that much different.
South Power is already in production. So there's one that's in production already, but this is the flagship.
Yeah, I think you're going to find you'll probably have 2, if not 3. You won't have 3 out of 3. You're not going to have 4 out of 4. But if I had to put down a nickel, that Todd may argue that we won't have any nickels anymore, I would say at least 2.
That's coming up. After the break, the production of the penny has stopped. At least one of our money panelists would like to see us toss some other Canadian currency too. That and what else is on our Monday Money Panel's radar this week when Alberta Primetime returns. Welcome back to Alberta Primetime and the Monday Money Panel. The federal government plans on saving money by eliminating money. The penny, to be exact. Canadian Mint no longer producing pennies. Finance Minister Jim Flaherty says, free your pennies, donate them to charity. Todd, are you in favor?
I'm totally in favor. I've been in favor of this since 1991, and they're finally doing it.
Shafik, today the city of Calgary, though, is among those having to refit all of their machines because the new loonies and toonies too light to register. Perhaps we should go even further and get rid of lots of coins.
Absolutely, and I'm 100% with Todd here. I mean, it costs 1.6 cents to make a penny. We're talking about an $11 million savings on a $550 billion deficit. So it's, you know, the penny, the nickel, I'm a little bit apathetic towards both of them. Get rid of them both. So.
Well, I suppose it is the idea that as inflation goes up, the penny and all of the smaller change just becomes so negligible. The problem is that Albertans might feel like they're being rounded up all the time. And no, it might not amount to a ton of money, but it feels wrong, Angus.
Well, it does feel a little wrong, and I think you're right. And I don't think just Albertans, but Canadians. And you say, well, you can't be $10.99 anymore. It's got to be $11. And I remember coming out here from Ontario for the very first time, and something cost, let's say, $1, and you go to hand them $2 because you had to pay tax. Mm-hmm. And now we still have our GST, but then I was used to retail sales tax. So, and I think Canadians don't like paying retail sales tax, and so it's just another way of, as you call it, rounding up. Like you got the provincial tax, you got your GST tax, and now you're taking away the pennies. Where am I going to win here?
Todd, how much farther will they go and how quickly? Is the nickel and the dime and maybe the quarter next?
Well, first of all, on the whole rounding up issue, other countries like New Zealand, they got rid of their penny and their 2-cent coin, and a convention develops very quickly where everyone knows you either round up or round down, and they haven't, their country hasn't collapsed because of this. I actually think we need to get rid of the penny, the nickel, and the quarter. Go with a 4-coin system, a dime, recirculate the 50-cent piece, and a loonie and a toonie. Round everything to 1 decimal. And remember, that's only for cash transactions you'd need to do that. Debit and credit card, which is by far the majority of cash that's spent or money that's spent, that would stay the same to 2 decimal places. It's just all these little tiny cash transactions. Talk to any retailer, they love to get rid of these coins.
Okay. I have to tell you, the only thing that worries me about the electronics is the theft. That's always on my mind. Moving right along, though, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives is accusing the federal government of giving this country's banks a multi-billion-dollar secret bailout in 2008. Something like $114 billion they're counting. Todd, is it likely to be true or unlikely?
I don't know enough about this story. I do know that the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, there's some very bright people that work there, but ideologically, they have never been down with the Harper government. So anything they would be able to find or any piece of research they could dig up to embarrass this government or somehow condemn the government, they're going to publish this. I don't know enough to really say if there is truth to the story or not, but there might be some answers that the government has to give on this for sure.
Okay. Angus, sorry, you want to jump in there?
I was just going to say one thing to keep in mind, Jennifer. The central banks around the world are lending money to their banks. And if they're lending money to their banks, it doesn't mean they're rescuing them. They're just part of that process of your money market system. Because you got, on an overnight basis, whether overnight 30 days, 10 days, whatever the case may be, there's a ton of money there, and banks need to be funded, and it's just part of the process. And if they have the confidence, the rates stay lower, and low rates provide more confidence. So it's not
nothing to be alarmed.
I wouldn't think so.
Shafik, it's April 30th, tax deadline day. Lots of people running to their banks. Yeah. April 30th, it comes on the same day every year, but there we are scrambling. Why does this continue, and what are the penalties like if we're not in on time?
It reminds me back to the time in university when I was studying the day before the exam about completing my taxes. I tend to put it off until the last day, and then I tend to e-file it. I think it's important that people understand taxes are the biggest expense we have. It's not our grocery bill. It's not our utility bill. As Albertans, about almost 40% of every dollar we make goes to pay taxes. And if you're late, they charge you 1% per month on the outstanding balance. So that's 12% compounded. So you don't want to miss this deadline. Even if you have to file and get reassessed later, make the deadline.
Plus 5% on the annual amount, correct?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
And if you do it twice, it's 10%.
Good to know.
We just want to catch up with everybody here once before we close off. We did talk about the GDP number being out nationally, a bit of a surprise decrease there. Anything else, Angus, on your radar this week?
I'd watch to see what's going to happen in Spain, and you got the Euro meeting coming up at the end of June, and you've got the French elections coming up. And France and Germany right now seem to be teasing each other and going in different directions. And that could become very awkward for us in the weeks and months ahead.
Make the markets a little more volatile worldwide.
Well, if they don't get along, that's Europe.
Right.
Right.
Todd, anything you're watching?
Well, I guess I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the labor markets, and we're going to see labor markets out on Friday, and that's always a big day to see what happened in the Alberta and the national labor markets in April.
All right. Thank you all for your time tonight. Appreciate it. Angus Watt is Managing Director of National Bank Financial and Angus Watt Advisory Group. Shafik Hirani is a Director and Senior Executive Financial Advisor with Investors Group Calgary. And Todd Hirsch, Senior Economist with ATB Financial.